different cultures all the time. I didn't think it'll be tough to make this presentation, but when I started doing this, the first question in my head was, what is the culture? And this is where I got stuck. There were so many different definitions on the internet. It's the clothes you wear, it's the food you eat, it's how you behave. Is it arranged marriages or love marriages? Is it relationships? There were so many different definitions, and most of them tried to combine these definitions into one thing, saying it's the way of living. Why was there a way of living? And then I came across a definition that I really liked. Culture is a way of coping with the world by defining it in very detail. When the civilization started, the world was so complex that humans couldn't find out what was the right way to do something. Was it right to eat the cows or worship the cows? Was it right to do monogamy or polygamy? Was it right to wear clothes or not wear clothes? So many confusions. So they just came up with these different rules, depending on where they were living, if there was sun, if it was easy to grow food, if cows were required for farming or not, or if there was no place to farm. These were the things that defined culture in the beginning. This is where the rules came from. And we just made the world simpler with these rules. This is what explained to me why the cultures were so different in different places. Because these rules were so different, and everyone was coming up with these rules depending on their own convenience of how they wanted the life to be. So when we say that all these different cultures exist, when we experience a different culture, we normally deal it with one of these three ways. We either confront the culture, we say the other culture is bad and our culture is better than that culture, also called ethnocentricity, looking through a cultural lens, or we complain about that culture, which grows up into cities like Brampton. So you have a culture in the middle of another culture, which just doesn't want to integrate. And the third is to conform, to try to learn, which is the best way to do it, to try to learn where these rules are coming from. How are these rules different than our rules? And how to understand their cultural lens. When I explain the cultural lens, there is one example I always have. When I was running that backpackers hostel, one day I was sitting in my kitchen, and one of the staff, there was a Canadian girl, she was cutting an apple. Tomorrow heard that. There was a Canadian girl cutting an apple. One of my staff walks into this kitchen, grabs a slice of the apple, eats it. The Canadian girl looked a little offended. She didn't say anything yet. My staff didn't realize any of that. He just came back into the kitchen, grabbed another slice of apple, started eating it. The Canadian girl grabbed his hand, put the apple down, cut the slice that he was eating from, gave it to him, said, "You're welcome." They were both offended. This explains the cultural lens. From the Indian guy's lens, it was, food is a shared resource. How could she deny food to me? So, such selfish Westerners. How rude. On the other side, the Canadian girl's side, it was her apple. She was cutting it. How can he eat it? How rude. Lazy Indian people. This was how cultural lenses have been defined in my head always. What I try to understand more is, even in this culture in Rotman, we spend time on a statistic homework that will never benefit us in life. But we spend less time on trying to understand the culture of different people, which research has shown multicultural organizations, multicultural headed organizations grow 50% more than non-multicultural headed organizations. And these are the finer details that we need to learn for growing more in business and in life. For me, I figured it's all small steps. I still complain about the Canadians someday. I still find them fake or too nice sometimes. And I am sure they complain about the other side as well. But there's days when I can understand where it's coming from and learn more about it from people like Brian. And
I'm not Canadian.
white people culture. I would just expand into white people culture. Thank you. How was it?